Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the studio. I hope you like the updates that I made. We're not here to talk about my studio, though. As you all know, we recently took a trip to Portugal, and I would like to share some videos and photos of our trip. So, first things first, I'm not going to talk about camera gear, what I used, and the sort of challenges or workflow things that I discovered while in Portugal. I'm going to save that for a separate video. This is just going to be purely what we did and what we saw during our trip. I'll probably also make a separate video about what to bring and what kind of clothes to pack if you are thinking of visiting Portugal in December. I'll save that stuff for a separate video. So with that out of the way, let's start with day one. So we flew into Lisbon, Portugal, and so day one was, of course, a shorter day just because a lot of it was spent traveling. And yeah, it was a long flight. It was like almost 7 hours flying from Toronto to Lisbon, and it was an uncomfortable flight. I actually made a video about how uncomfortable the seats were on that flight. You can go see that video. I'm not going to complain about that here. But anyway, we made it to Lisbon, and then I think we Ubered on over to our Airbnb in the Alfama district. So we chose to stay in the Alfama district because it's a bit of an older, more historic area, and it really was a more of a unique neighborhood. Gave it a bit of, more of an older sort of European feel. So that's why we decided to stay there. When we arrived, it was around lunchtime, and we ate at a small restaurant in that district called O Corvo. We had a charcuterie plate, as you can see, and also some ceviche. And then thereafter, we went for a walk in the sort of neighboring district. I actually don't know what it's called. I'm going to call it the Rua da Prata area, and it's a bit more modern. It's got straighter streets, where Alfama is like a bunch of very tiny, windy roads. Rua da Prata's got more bigger, longer, straight grid style roads and lots of shopping. So it's like a shopping district basically. Yeah, so we walked around that area and we saw the Elevador de Santa Justa. Sorry if I'm butchering these pronunciations. I'm going to try and throw on what I think is a Portuguese pronunciation, just because it always sounds weird when you try and say foreign words completely in a regular American accent. But yeah, so we went and we saw this elevator. You can go up that elevator, and it's supposed to give you a pretty decent view of the city. But when we arrived, there was a massive line, and so we opted not to go up the elevator. There are plenty of other areas where you can go to get great views of the city. But just be aware that if you do visit this elevator, be prepared for massive lines. So while we walked around that area, we came across a pretty unique store. I believe it's called Comer's O Mundo Fantástico da Sardina Portuguesa. It's basically a canned sardine shop. I guess it's not just sardines. They probably have other kinds of canned fish as well, but the whole shop is themed like some kind of circus. So my guess is that one of Portugal's major industries is canned fish. Definitely go check it out. It's definitely a touristy kind of place. I'm sure you can get very good sardines elsewhere as well. But this is a unique experience. Be prepared to pay a premium though for those sardines. So after walking around that Rua da Prata area for a while, it became dinner time. So we walked through Praça do Comércio on our way to dinner. And this was right after Christmas, so you can see that there were still a bunch of lights and Christmas style decorations up. and it was very pretty. So we made our way to dinner at a place called Time Out Market. It's basically this giant warehouse full of tiny stalls that are run by chefs, I guess. And so they're like different restaurants, but just in stalls in this big warehouse. It's like Smallman Galley in Pittsburgh, but like way bigger, on steroids basically. So yeah, anyway, the place was packed and clearly was very popular amongst tourists as well. And we went to a restaurant called Kiko. I would say is one of the nicer restaurants in that area. It has its own sort of bar style seating where a lot of the stalls don't have seating at the restaurant. You have to order it and then you take it to a communal seating area to eat. Kiko actually had like bar style seating around the kitchen, so that was pretty cool. I had a squid ink risotto with shrimp and bacon, and it was phenomenal. But I am also a sucker for pastas. Charlotte had a octopus salad, which I understand was pretty good as well. Octopus seems to be a pretty popular dish in Portugal. So after dinner, we did a little bit more walking around through that Rua da Prata area. We were looking for dessert places, and we ended up getting some gelato, and that wrapped up day one. So that's it for our first day in Lisbon, Portugal. Now, for those of you who are interested, I am shooting this video at 24 frames a second, which is a little bit different. I usually shoot at 30 frames a second. And the reason for this is because nearly all of the footage I shot in Lisbon, or in Portugal, I should say, was shot on 24 frames a second. And that was because they use POW over there, right? So their electricity runs at 50 hertz, which means that if I shot at 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second, you really see banding through the really bad banding through the frame, and so that's why I changed to 24 frames a second. It doesn't completely get rid of the problem, but it made it a little bit better. And so in order to mesh this footage with my Portugal footage, I'm shooting this at 24 frames a second. And again, for those who are interested, it is currently shooting at 1/50th of a second, ISO 320, using this current lighting setup. I just have my LED panel as my key light now because I've turned off the room lights. It's at a color temperature of 3200 Kelvin at 40% power. I'm shooting without any picture profiles, just standard picture profile. And that's about it. I'll see you in the next one.